Think I'm scared, Captain?
The spouses are approaching the border.
So why don't you just get the hell out of here and both feel better?
They are very worried.
Get out of the car, please.
They are about to be checked.
Identification?
The couple is given permission.
Never known it to fail. Why they gotta change clothes 3 times in a single day? I'll never.
Got a positive here.
The border guards arrest the woman for being pregnant.
Next.
Your turn.
The woman goes in fear for inspection.
Here. Proceed.
The woman passes the inspection thanks to the magnetic vest.
Hey, this bitch is trying to get past our machines. Goddamn fucking flak jacket.
Their deception is exposed. The spouses almost got caught.
Run! Go!
The husband sacrifices himself.
Hold your position. Put your hands over your head. You are under arrest.
In an overcrowded truck, Brennick and other prisoners are being transported to Fortress, a high-security prison owned by the Mentel Corporation. The prison is located in the middle of the desert, making escape impossible. Brennick tells one of the prisoners that he and his wife tried to escape because they conceived a second child after the death of their firstborn. He reveals that he has to spend 31 years in prison. Despite the long sentence, Brennick considers himself lucky because his wife managed to escape. The prisoners arrive at Fortress. While the men prepare for inspection, a greeting from the prison's warden, Poe, is broadcasted on the screen.
Everything here is the property of the Mentel Corporation, including you.
Warden Poe informs that the prison is under constant surveillance and that the prisoner's schedule is determined by the Z-10 system. Poe also introduces the psycho-blocking observation systems, which allow the authorities to know what the prisoners are thinking at all times. Brennick and the other prisoners undergo a stomach-marking procedure. Automatic pulsators are implanted in each of them to control behavior through painful impulses. The prisoners are forbidden from crossing the boundary lines within the prison. Crossing the yellow line triggers a severe pain attack, while crossing the red line results in a lethal outcome. One of the prisoners experiences a panic attack and accidentally crosses the yellow line. The pulsator activates, causing the man to collapse in agony. Unaware of his actions, he makes a fatal mistake and crosses the red line. What would you do if you found yourself in such terrifying conditions? Would you maintain self-control or give in to panic? Share your thoughts in the comments. The shocked prisoners descend on an elevator to the lower levels. Fortress consists of 30 levels, and at its center are neutron cannons that destroy organic matter only. Brennick and a guy named Nino Gomes step out on one of the floors. The robot Z-10 identifies them and assigns them to a chamber, but a man named Stiggs greets them extremely unfriendly. Stiggs argues with Z-10 that their chamber is already overcrowded, but the robot quickly silences him, threatening to activate the pulsator.
Complaining is a violation.
The overcrowded chambers are protected by laser beams that prevent the prisoners from escaping. Before lights out, one of the cellmates named Abraham warns Brennick not to sleep, but Brennick doesn't take his words seriously. During the night, Brennick has a dream about making love to Karen. During the prisoner's inspection, Z-10 scans Brennick's face and broadcasts his dream on the screens in Warden Poe's office. Poe is mesmerized by the footage, but Z-10 reminds him that it's time to inflict pain on Brennick for the forbidden thought process.
This is an unauthorized thought process.
The next day, the prisoners work hard on a construction site. Brennick notices a strange man who appears to be like a zombie. D-Day, one of Brennick's cellmates, explains that his mind and soul were destroyed for attempting to escape. Suddenly, cries for help distract the prisoners. Brennick rushes to find out what happened and sees Maddox, a local authority figure, attempting to rape Gomes. Brennick fights with Maddox, but they are interrupted by Z-10, activating their pulsators and stating that violence is prohibited. Brennick, Maddox, and Gomes are placed in a cell surrounded by laser beams. Z-10 informs them that they will be released once the instigator of the fight is identified. Brennick, wanting to protect Gomes, takes the blame upon himself. Brennick is taken to Warden Poe, who is being shaved by Abraham at that moment. The prisoner is working for the prison's administration, promising him early release. Warden Poe shows Brennick a recording of his wife taking a shower and delivers the horrifying news. Karen was arrested immediately after Brennick. Poe orders Brennick and Karen to be intestinated, subjecting them to excruciating pain as punishment. Later, Brennick learns from Abraham that the women's section is located on levels A and B. He hopes to make his way there and find Karen. Meanwhile, in the women's section, Karen comforts a pregnant cellmate who refuses to give her baby to the corporation. Medical workers arrive and take her to the operating room. In the men's section, Maddox suddenly attacks Brennick, and the men engage in a brutal fight. Crowds of prisoners watch to see the outcome of their confrontation, including Karen, who suddenly notices her husband. Z10 suggests to Warden Poe to activate the pulsators, but he stops the robot, captivated by the duel unfolding on the screens. Brennick and Maddox move onto a moving platform, and Brennick manages to push his opponent off. Maddox hangs over the abyss, and Poe orders Brennick to get rid of him. However, Brennick defies the warden and instead helps Maddox climb back onto the platform. But Warden Poe decides to teach all the prisoners a lesson and destroys Maddox with the neutron cannon. Brennick and most of the prisoners are intestinated as punishment. Suffering from pain, Brennick notices a pulsator on the platform that fell out of Maddox's stomach, and he secretly takes it. He manages to pass the pulsator to Gomez before Z10 sends him to the torture chamber for disobedience. After a while, Karen is brought to the torture chamber, and she sees a beaten Brennick chained to a massive machine for erasing consciousness. Karen tells her husband that Warden Poe sent her and that she must convince Brennick to cooperate with him. Brennick doesn't even want to hear about it, but a frightened Karen pleads with him, as it's the only way he can survive. However, Brennick remains steadfast in his position. And what would you do in the shoes of the main character? Would you agree to cooperate to avoid monstrous torture? Share your thoughts in the comments. Karen is taken away by the guards, and the lights go out in the torture chamber as Brennick's machine begins to rotate. During the process of erasing his consciousness, Brennick is tormented by numerous horrifying hallucinations. Meanwhile, Warden Poe invites Karen into his office and informs her that the procedure has been going on for 3 days, and no one has lasted beyond the 4th day. He offers to release Brennick in exchange for Karen moving into Poe's quarters and becoming his companion. Initially, Karen rejects his proposal, but Poe vividly demonstrates the suffering of her husband. Reluctantly, Karen agrees to the conditions, and a satisfied Poe stops the monstrous procedure. Brennick is brought back to the cell, and his fellow inmates are horrified by what has been done to him. He no longer reacts to anything and doesn't even feel pain.
He's a ghost, man.
Karen fulfills the terms of the agreement and moves to live with Warden Poe. One night, she discovers Poe sitting in a chair with numerous wires attached to his body. Karen screams in horror and demands an explanation from Poe. The warden informs the shocked woman that the Mentel Corporation has turned him into a more advanced human being. Poe reveals that he consumes amino acids once a month and no longer needs sleep or food. He believes that when the majority of people are modified, the world will be rid of hunger and overpopulation. Warden Poe was one of the first babies transformed into a superhuman by Mentel, and now all children born here undergo similar procedures. Sometime later, Abraham shaves Brennick and tells him that Karen's pregnancy is already noticeable and that their child will be born soon. Brennick remains in a zombie-like state, not responding to Abraham's words, but suddenly a tear falls from his eye. At night, Karen offers Poe to try champagne. Warden Poe is amazed by its incredible taste and regrets not having tried it earlier, but suddenly he loses consciousness. Karen, taking advantage of the moment, activates the Z10 control panel and scans Brennick's head. Brennick's dream is displayed on the screen, showing him as a young boy trapped in a deep pit. Karen enters Brennick's dream and helps him climb out of the pit, thus restoring his erased consciousness. The next morning, the inmates gather to wake up their unfortunate comrade, but Brennick shocks them with his unexpected change.
Holy fuck, you're alive!
His cellmates tell Brennick that he has been unconscious for a whole 4 months. Suddenly, Brennick remembers that Karen is about to give birth soon. Abraham assures him that she is fine and reveals that Karen is now living with Poe, which is the reason Brennick is still alive. Brennick is disappointed by this news, but he suddenly realizes that it brings Karen closer to freedom. Now, Brennick is determined to escape from Fortress. He seeks help from Abraham, who has connections to the higher-ups, but Abraham is skeptical. He believes that escaping from here is impossible, but reluctantly agrees to assist. Soon, Abraham informs Karen that he is Brennick's cellmate and that Brennick only regained consciousness yesterday. Karen is overjoyed, knowing that she has indeed managed to save her husband. Abraham also tells the elated woman that Brennick plans to escape, which is very risky. However, Karen is convinced that she can help him. In the cell, Gomes returns Maddox's pulse weapon to Brennick. Brennick is confident that it will definitely aid their escape. D-Day suggests dismantling the pulse weapon since he was an explosives expert on the outside. Meanwhile, Warden Poe discusses the construction of 5 new levels of the prison with Z-10 and orders the robot to increase the inmates' working hours. At the same time, Karen secretly sneaks into Poe's room and steals a holographic lens. She narrowly avoids getting caught, but manages to hide the lens in her mouth. In the cell, D-Day enthusiastically examines the pulse weapon's components and explains to Brennick how they work. Brennick asks him to reassemble the pulse weapon and extract a similar one from himself. However, D-Day warns that it's very dangerous and the device could detonate at any moment. Karen asks Abraham to pass the holographic lens to Brennick. A frightened Abraham refuses, as he doesn't want to risk his early release. Karen is confident that he won't receive it anyway and pleads for his help for the sake of her child. Abraham helps Karen and hands the lens to Brennick. Using the laser at the entrance to the cell, their cellmates activate the lens, resulting in a massive holographic blueprint of the prison. Brennick quickly finds a way to escape through a pipeline. In the nick of time, Abraham returns the holographic lens to his place while Warden Poe is engrossed in conversation with Karen. Unexpectedly, Poe suggests that Karen divorce her husband since he will never leave the prison anyway. He turns on the projector and suddenly realizes that the lens is malfunctioning. Abraham explains that the lens became dusty, so he decided to clean it. Warden Poe becomes furious and threatens to cancel Abraham's early release. Once calm, Poe once again persuades Karen to leave her husband and marry him. He promises to obtain permission from Mentel for them to adopt the child, ensuring that he won't mutate it. Additionally, Poe promises to free Brennick. Abraham informs Brennick about Poe's proposal and reveals that Karen must give him an answer by tomorrow evening. Brennick cannot allow that and declares that they are leaving tomorrow morning. D-Day excitedly announces that he managed to assemble a magnetic detonator, which they can use to extract the pulse weapons from themselves. However, nobody is sure of the procedure's success, as the pulse weapon could explode at any moment. Stiggs volunteers and announces that he is joining the escape with the others. D-Day warns that it will be painful and begins the extraction process. Next day, Warden Poe rehearses his speech about John Brennick's pardon, but he is abruptly interrupted by Z-10, who demands to see the surveillance footage. Shocked, Poe watches the footage of Karen stealing the lens and Abraham returning it. Z-10 announces that the Mentel Board of Directors has decided to strip Warden Poe of all his authority, and his deputy will soon arrive at Fortress. Meanwhile, Brennick and his cellmates install the pulse weapons on a metal pipe in the construction area. A fight breaks out among the men, and Z-10 immediately responds to the rule violation by initiating intestination. The pulse weapons explode, creating a massive hole in the pipe, through which the escapees quickly enter. Warden Poe demands that Z-10 restore his control over the situation and initiates painful intestination for the remaining prisoners. Poe orders Z-10 to open the steam valves, clear the construction area, and deploy strike clones. Brennick and his companions run through the pipeline, but suddenly they are engulfed in fiery steam. The escapees return to the opening as Warden Poe's voice demands their surrender, warning that they will be destroyed otherwise. Poe addresses Brennick, reminding him that his wife is in his hands. Stiggs decides to surrender, fearing being cooked alive in the pipeline, and makes a grave mistake. Meanwhile, Abraham attempts to take Karen away from the warden's quarters, but Poe stops them. He orders Z-10 to intestinate Abraham, but Abraham only laughs and reveals his pulse weapon. Poe attacks Abraham and chokes him. Karen tries to stop him by striking him in the back with a shard of glass, but Poe remains unaffected. In the pipeline, the escapees defeat one of the strike clones and discover that they are modified humans. Brennick takes the clone's weapon, exits into the construction area, and deals with the remaining fighters. Poe directs the neutron cannon at the escapees, narrowly missing D-Day. Brennick, Gomes, and D-Day make their way into the elevator, fending off the clones and ascend to the upper levels among the joyful cheers of other prisoners. They arrive at Warden Poe's quarters and find Abraham's lifeless body. Brennick wants to know where Karen is, and Poe shows him a transmission from the operating room where doctors are about to extract Karen's baby. The fugitives, along with Poe, head to the operating room, but Z-10 opens fire on them. However, everyone except Poe manages to survive. D-Day suggests disabling Z-10 to stop the doctors, and Brennick leads him to the computer console. However, they are suddenly attacked by strike clones, who shoot D-Day. Brennick destroys them, and D-Day manages to finish what he started and shuts down Z-10 on his last breath. All the cells open, and the crowds of prisoners try to escape. Brennick and Gomes free Karen from the operating room, and then they find a truck on which they finally leave Fortress. They stop as soon as they enter Mexican territory. The escapees find an abandoned barn where Karen is about to give birth, but it turns out that the truck is still controlled by Z-10, and it suddenly runs over Gomes when he exits the barn. Brennick tries to stop the vehicle by shooting at it at close range, but it crashes into the barn where Karen is. Brennick is filled with horror, but suddenly he hears a baby crying. Karen has already given birth, and now the three of them will be finally happy. Would you dare to escape from such a prison? Share your thoughts in the comments, like and subscribe to the channel. And don't forget that the best comments will appear in the next video. And here is the best comment from the previous video. See you soon.